There's a rule in my line of work. Don't steal from crazy people. Especially not the kind who make people disappear for sport. That's why, when the job first came in, I passed. The target? A drug lord in Miami, known only as El Moreno. Private penthouse. 23rd floor. Former cartel enforcer turned underground kingpin. Reputation, lethal. Money, legendary. And according to the client, he had $4 million in clean cash locked in a panic vault behind a mirrored wall, disguised as a wine fridge. I was told it was easy. No armed guards. No private army. Just one bodyguard, one personal assistant, and a 6-hour window when El Moreno was out meeting a supplier. Everyone said it was doable. I said it was suicide. And I walked away. But 3 weeks later, I came back. Because someone offered me double. And because I'm not the kind of man who says no twice to a $2 million payout. It started like most high-value jobs, with silence. I didn't ask who the client was. They didn't tell me why they wanted Moreno robbed. All I knew was this. The money was real. The vault existed. And if I pulled it off, I'd be set for life. But first, I needed an inside view. So I did what I always do. I got a job. I spent 6 weeks posing as a high-end tech consultant. Fake company. Slick website. Polished LinkedIn. I targeted Moreno's property manager, some no-name LLC that handled security upgrades for the building. Offered them a free assessment, in exchange for exposure and good PR. They bit. And that's how I ended up walking the halls of the Viceroy residences, clipboard in hand, dressed in a logoed polo shirt, taking notes on signal interference and dead zones in their Wi-Fi infrastructure. They thought I was fixing routers. I was mapping the entire building. By week 3, I had everything I needed. Elevator schematics, rooftop access times, entry badge override scripts, and most importantly, a floor plan of Penthouse 23B, El Moreno's private domain. The vault was real. Disguised as a dual-chamber Sub-Zero wine fridge, custom built into the wall. Thermal-sealed, pressure-sensitive, with a magnetic kill lock tied to the alarm system. You couldn't break it open without setting off a dozen silent alerts. But if you had the right fingerprint, and accessed it during a system reboot window, you had 120 seconds before the alarm rearmed. That reboot happened twice a week, like clockwork, Monday and Thursday at 2 a.m., during software updates on the whole building's security grid. That's when I'd strike. The plan. Rooftop descent from the building next door. Enter through the terrace. Sliding panel, low-profile lock. Infiltrate during system reboot. Access the vault. Extract the cash. Disappear in 22 minutes or less. No weapons. No bodies. No noise. Just precision. I told myself I wasn't stealing from a drug lord. I was stealing from a safe. But I forgot the second rule. A clean plan doesn't mean a clean exit. And when I opened that vault, the first thing I noticed wasn't the cash. It was the tracking device blinking softly behind the stacks of money. I froze. In front of me were 7 stacks of bundled bills, vacuum-sealed and shrink-wrapped in a rectangular casing, exactly as expected. But tucked behind the last row, embedded inside a velvet-lined cavity, was a small black square with a blinking red LED. A GPS tracker. Maybe it was meant for internal inventory. Maybe it was meant to track the money if it was ever stolen. Or maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the cash they cared about. It was who took it. And suddenly, I wasn't stealing money anymore. I was triggering a test. A trap. My instincts screamed at me to abort. I could have left the vault open, walked out empty-handed, pretended it never happened. But I didn't. Because $4 million was still sitting right in front of me. And if I walked away now, it meant this job owned me. It meant El Moreno had beaten me without even being home. I wasn't ready to let that happen. So I took 6 out of 7 stacks, left the final row and the GPS behind. I packed the money tight into a thermoline duffel with RFID blocking. Then I closed the vault. Fast. Clean. And I got the hell out. I reached the terrace at 2:16 a.m. The building was still quiet. Security logs still in reboot mode. The rooftop hook was still anchored where I left it, buried in the ventilation casing 2 stories above. I clipped in, started the ascent, and just as I reached the ledge, a phone began ringing inside the penthouse. Not mine, not loud, but unmistakable. And then I heard a footstep. Not from the hallway. From inside. I glanced back through the glass. Silhouette. Male. Heavyset. Broad shoulders. Not El Moreno. Too short. His bodyguard. He wasn't supposed to be there. They told me the place would be empty. I hung there, suspended on a climbing line, heart slamming in my chest, watching him walk barefoot into the kitchen, grab a drink from the fridge, the fake fridge, the one hiding the vault. He stood there, drinking, thinking. Then slowly, he turned and looked at the terrace door. Straight at me. I pulled the ascender hard, swinging upward like a man possessed. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe. I didn't care that my gloves were burning through the palms. I made it to the rooftop and bolted for the opposite edge, unhooked, dropped onto the next building, and disappeared into the service exit 3 floors down. By 2:43 a.m., I was inside a stolen sedan heading west. And by 3:15 a.m., I realized something was wrong. The money was sweating. Cash doesn't sweat. Unless it's carrying a secondary tracker. I pulled over. Ripped open the duffel. Scanned with a signal sniffer I kept stashed in the lining. There it was, transmitting on a tight, low-frequency pulse. A second tracker, this time embedded inside a stack itself. Small. Flat. Surgical. I hadn't just been watched. I'd been tagged. I dumped the bag in a storm drain on I-195. Took only 2 stacks, cleaned, scanned, split. The rest? Gone. I switched cars. Switched clothes. Switched identities. But deep down I knew. It didn't matter how careful I was now. They weren't tracking the money anymore. They were tracking me. The first call came 3 days later. It wasn't a voice I recognized. Male. Mid-40s. Calm. No threats. No shouting. Just one sentence. You were supposed to take all of it. Click. That's when I knew I'd walked into something bigger than a vault job. This wasn't just a heist. It was bait. I went underground. Rented a nondescript apartment outside Tampa under a backup identity I hadn't touched in years. Old name, old documents, fresh burner. I paid in cash. I used no cards. I spoke to no one. Still, on the 5th night, I came home and found the lights were on. I always kill the lights when I leave. Always. I drew my sidearm, checked every room. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. But on the kitchen table sat a glass of water, half full. Room temperature. Fresh. That wasn't just a message. That was a promise. They knew where I was. They could have killed me. But they didn't. I ran the next morning. Left everything. Used a cash-only bus route heading north. No luggage. No ID. Didn't even bring a phone. For the first time in years, I felt like prey. And I hated it. Because I hadn't made a mistake. I'd done the job clean. But someone else had written the rules differently. I started putting the pieces together. Back when the job was first offered, I turned it down. The client had come through an encrypted channel. No direct contact, just a fixer named Jonas. I'd used him before. Always reliable. Always distant. But now I needed answers. So I reached out to Jonas using an old fail-safe drop I kept in Montreal. 2 days later, I got a burner phone in the mail. One message inside. He wasn't the real target. You were. It hit me like a truck. They didn't need the cash. They didn't need the vault. They needed me inside El Moreno's penthouse. They needed my fingerprints. My patterns. My actions. Because somewhere in that penthouse, there was something I didn't see. Something I'd accidentally interacted with. Maybe a flash drive. Maybe a switch. Maybe a hidden camera triggered by thermal profile. And whatever it was, it put me in their game. On day 10, the first body dropped. It wasn't mine. It was Jonas. Found in a hotel tub in Quebec. Shot in the throat, hands zip-tied. Execution. Whoever he was really working for, he'd failed them. And they were sending a message. To me. That's when I realized. If I didn't find out what I was pulled into, I wouldn't live long enough to care. I went back to Miami. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even because I wanted answers. I went back because I knew one thing for sure. If someone wanted me dead that badly, it meant I was still useful. And I was going to leverage that. I couldn't go near the Viceroy. Couldn't trace anything directly. So I went to the one place no one would expect. Little Havana. Specifically, an old cigar bar where Moreno's old crew used to launder money back in the early days, before he went legit. I walked in wearing a baseball cap, aviators, and the kind of nervous energy that makes security watch you but not shoot you. Sat down. Ordered rum. Waited. I knew someone would recognize me. And they did. Guy at the far end of the bar. Bald. Scar on his neck. Name, Tico, a former bagman who once moved bricks for Moreno's cousin. He didn't say much, just motioned with his chin. I followed him out the back door. In the alley, he said, "You shouldn't be here." I agreed. But I asked him one question. What was really in that vault? He didn't laugh. He didn't threaten me. He just shook his head. Wasn't about what was in it. It was about what was under it. That's when the picture came together. The vault was camouflaging something else. Underneath the panic room floor was a server drive, isolated, unconnected, air-gapped. It wasn't about money. It was about information. Moreno had been collecting digital blackmail, recordings, transaction logs, photographs, internal documents from people across multiple cartels, politicians, DA insiders, private contractors, a failsafe, insurance, enough leverage to keep him untouchable. And I'd walked in and triggered the whole system. They didn't care about the cash. Hell, Moreno could print that in his sleep. They cared about the fact that I'd tripped a motion sensor beneath the vault. One that activated the dead man's protocol. That tracker inside the cache? Not just GPS. A signal beacon. One that pinged multiple off-site nodes with a location tag, identifying me as the person who had accessed Moreno's insurance system. And that meant one thing. Every name on that list now thought I had their secrets. Which meant they all wanted me gone. Not just Moreno. Everyone. I left Tico in the alley. Didn't run this time. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense. I made a copy of the beacon. Then I uploaded it, slowly, painfully, to a secure relay built to leak in fragments over 30 days. I set it to send automatically if I died. And I left a signature on it. A name the right people would know. The Ghost. That name had weight. Enough to buy me time. Maybe even mercy. It's been 14 months since the job. I've moved 6 times. Changed faces twice. Cut off every old contact. I don't talk to anyone. I don't stay anywhere longer than a week. But I'm alive. Barely. And if you're hearing this, it means the countdown finally ran out. It means someone finally found me. And before I disappear for good, I want you to understand something. I didn't get greedy. I didn't get sloppy. I just picked the wrong vault.